This week, the Senate expected to take up the $95 billion foreign aid bill passed by the House over the weekend. And joining us this morning to discuss that bill, plus issues she'll address with constituents this week, Representative Jill Tokuda. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
Now, of course, the big developments over the weekend, that foreign aid package. We're going to break it down. The bill allocates nearly $61 billion for Ukraine. We have for Israel, about $26 billion and another $8 billion to counter China's actions in Taiwan. And we were talking a little bit about it while we were in commercial. You know, here at home, sometimes those things feel so far away.
Right.
Why is it important for people here in Hawaii to care about these issues and to care about these bill packages you guys are trying to pass on Capitol Hill?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, let me just say this. That national security is also about protecting us at the home front. And one of the things that I'm disappointed that was not included was my $5 billion amendment. It was bipartisan, it was well supported to actually be able to put in those $5 billion into the CDBG Disaster Recovery Fund. As we know, it's about the long-term recovery for Maui and all of our communities across the country that have faced disaster. And so for myself, it was trying to remind people, yes, it's about national security globally, but we also have to look at home, and I'm going to continue to push that fund as well. But when you take a look at the package of aid that was provided, all of these things do matter, especially to Hawaii. We're right here in the Indo-Pacific. We have China, North Korea right at our doorsteps. Constant threats that Indo-PACOM are having to monitor, including Russia. And so making sure that Putin does not get an inch in Ukraine and empower China, it means we've got to make sure the money is there. I'm very glad that there was an Indo-Pacific aid package as well for Taiwan and the region, and so that was really critical. But of course, the Ukraine money was so important to not empower our adversaries in the Indo-Pacific, which again, we are right there on that front doorstep. So this is as much about home security for us as domestic security.
And let's talk about Maui recovery. Of course, top of mind for you on Capitol Hill, trying to make sure that stays front of mind for people who, of course, aren't here in Hawaii to remember Maui and, of course, other places in the country that have dealt with natural disasters. But we had that report come out last week from the AG's office, just phase one, of course. How did you feel about what was included in that first phase, and what are you hoping is included in the next two phases of the report?
Well, you know, I think with anybody who has gone through, but especially for our Maui Ohana, our Lahaina community, I think going through that report was probably very difficult. Just even reliving those timelines for many people, right? Getting this information of what happens so quickly, as hindsight is, what we wish we could have known ahead of time and planned for and done. It's always very difficult to take that in as well. But the bottom line is we have got to make sure that as part of phase 2 and phase 3, we are really focused on how we are going to prepare and make sure that this never happens again, whether it's on Maui or any of our islands. And so I know it's tough to get information in tranches. We want it all at one time, but we have to remember this is phase 1. We've got to look at the next coming phases. We've got to continue to ask hard questions. So I do hope that based upon the report in phase 1 and the timeline and the information that rolls in terms of how first responders responded to the information they received, that should help to inform phase 2 and 3 in terms of what specific questions and outcomes do we want to make sure is included so that we can best prepare, we can continue to support our Lahaina community as they are recovering and rebuilding.
And of course, this week you are here at home for a few different things, but you are continuing your set of town halls. This week you'll be in Kona. What have you been hearing from constituents as you've been, talking to them, and what are you hoping to address to Kona residents this week?
Well, first of all, take a look at that sunrise. I definitely have the most beautiful district in the country, but I'm really glad I'll be able to go and just listen and talk story. I think when we go to Kona, we'll be hearing a lot of different things, but I'm really looking forward to hearing about what's of concern to them. As you mentioned, we deal with so many national issues, but how do we bring it back home for housing, affordability, talking about farm bill negotiations coming up in earnest when we go back, and how is it important we make sure we can help our farmers put food on their tables while they really focus on putting local good food on ours. And I want to, quite frankly, fight for more SNAP money for our people here that tend to get the short end of the stick given high food prices. And so there's a lot going on, a lot I hope to hear at those town halls, and I hope to see our community members in the Kona side there on Wednesday, 4:30 to 5:30.
And I know I want to emphasize that 4:30 to 5:30
Yes.
because I know there was a slight time change. So if you thought that the time was different, of course, that information came out a little earlier, but update, 4:30.
Apologies, we could not get off island on a later flight. There was no later flight, but again, we want to be there. We will always be back again, but please join us 4:30 to 5:30 at the West Hawaii Civic Center on Wednesday.
And I know the farming communities and the farming bills have been top of mind for you. I feel like every single time you've been here, we've touched a little bit on it. Particularly with Hawaii Island, I know we do have quite a bit of farms. Is there anything that you see there that you want to address with constituents that may be different from some of our other islands?
Well, you know, we talked about national security, but food security is national security, right? We have got to be able to feed our people, and we've got so many great producers, farmers, producers, ranchers on Hawaii Island, and they struggle. It's very, very difficult. All the input costs, transportation costs. I'm fighting to try to make sure we get more transportation reimbursement money for them, trying to make sure we invest as they battle disease and pests, and you think of all of the challenges they have to grow our food. But also, as I was mentioning, a lot of the Farm Bill is the feeding programs. So how can we make sure from our keiki to kupuna, we are giving them as much food money as possible, and that we're making sure that we can actually, when it comes to, you know, farm, food banks and whatnot, we should be able to be investing in local food and local farmers as well. So there's so much opportunity in the farm bill and agriculture to support local business, local farmers, ranchers, and producers, and put good food, nutritious food on people's tables. And that's my whole goal.
And once again, Wednesday, 4:30, the West Hawaii Civic Center. Okay, and of course, Representative Tokuda will be there in Kona. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.